This week in Africa, in Xai-Xai, Mozambique, 2 of 5 former police officers were sentenced for the murder of election observation activist Anastácio Matavel, who was killed last year on the 7th of October. The judge sentenced police officers Edson Silika and his colleague Ecludia Mapulase to 24 and 23 years in prison, respectively. This case is an interesting one, as the murder of Anastácio was ordered by a high-ranking member of the Police Special Operations Group, GOE, Mr. Tudela Guirugo. This case shows the corruption in sectors of the Mozambican police system and shows the intent by government agents to rig elections and to change voting patterns. The issue of vote rigging is one that is big in many countries all over Africa. In South Africa, the President Cyril Ramaphosa addressed the nation on Wednesday on the issue of gender-based violence, referring to it as the second pandemic that the nation is faced with. South Africa is known as the rape capital of the world, and in these 2 past weeks, the president said no fewer than 21 women and children died. This figure is almost as staggering as the statistic that every day 144 cases of rape are reported. The names of Tshegofatso Pule, Naledi Phakindau, Nompumelelo Chaga, Nomfazi Kabada, Nwabisa Mkwandela, Altesia Kotsi, Lindelwa Penny, and many others were said by the president to give a name to the faces who are victims of gender-based violence. There is, however, hope as the country works harder to oppose and to condemn gender-based violence. The only question I have is how much longer must we endure? And what will we do as citizens to put a stop to this issue? With your news from Southern Africa, this has been Malika. Have a great week. In South Africa, the President Cyril Ramaphosa addressed the nation on Wednesday on the issue of gender-based violence, referring to it as the second pandemic that the nation is faced with. South Africa is known as the rape capital of the world, and in these 2 past weeks, the president said no fewer than 21 women and children died. This figure is almost as staggering as the statistic that every day 144 cases of rape are reported. The names of Tshegofatso Pule, Naledi Phakindau, Nompumelelo Chaga, Nomfazi Kabada, Nwabisa Mkwandela, Altesia Kotsi, Lindelwa Penny, and many others were said by the president to give a name to the faces who are victims of gender-based violence. There is, however, hope as the country works harder to oppose and to condemn gender-based violence. The only question I have is how much longer must we endure? And what will we do as citizens to put a stop to this issue? With your news from Southern Africa, this has been Malika. Have a great week.
Hello everyone and welcome to This Week in Africa. In North Africa, in Libya, after the spread of human rights violations, videos on Libyan social media, videos of summary executions and tortures by the Libyan National Army, the Human Rights Watch declared the formation of an international investigative commission that will look at all the war crimes and human rights violations by fighting parties in the country. Meanwhile, accusations have been pointed toward the leader of the LNA, the Libyan National Army, General Khalifa Haftar. General Haftar was an important figure in the Libyan coup d'etat of 1969 that got Colonel Gaddafi to power. He was captured by Chadian forces in the Libya-Chad War in 1987. He was released after 3 years in a deal with the US and spent 20 years there. He supported the rebels against the brother leader Gaddafi in the civil war of 2011. In 2014, he came back to Libya as commander of the Libyan army. After seeing what Islamists have done to Libya, his hatred for them grew, which led to the creation of the LNA that fights against the government of national accord, which he believes is controlled by Islamists. The LNA supports the House of Representatives, but in Libya, it is not that political bodies control the militias, but the opposite. Moving to Egypt, in her last Instagram post, Sarah Higazi, the Egyptian activist, said, "The sky is sweeter than the earth, and I want the sky, not the earth." She committed suicide in Canada after she sought asylum there in 2018, after her release from a prison in Cairo. The reason she was detained is raising the rainbow pride flag in a concert in Cairo. The government responded by a national anti-gay crackdown. Sarah was tortured and malnutritioned in prison. As Africans, we believe in diversity, not only in culture but also in lifestyles, ideologies, and sexual orientations. It is our duty to maintain that diversity and to defend all types of activism in the continent. You have to ask yourself as an individual, what can I do? You can do like me, raise awareness about it. There are people who commit their efforts and for this cause. Our future is in your hands. Moving to Morocco, airplanes of Royal Air Maroc have been flying over African skies to send medical support to 15 African countries. Thousands of medication aid and prevention of the COVID-19 spread materials made in Morocco. This act breaks the habit of African countries receiving aid from foreign nations. This time those products are made in Africa and distributed to Africans. However, Moroccan diplomacy's true aim is not only to help friendly countries, but the kingdom has been launching different projects and initiatives to gain support in the Western Sahara conflict. Morocco is determined to win this diplomatic war. Several tweets are posted by different people from Gulf states demonstrating the ethnic difference between them and North Africans. Here are some examples. The question of race and identity in North Africa has always been complicated. The majority of North Africans identify as Arabs, others as Amazigh. Those who identify as Amazigh are often seen as separatists. However, North Africa's history did not start with the Arab conquest, and in fact, that conquest is like any other form of colonialism. The Caliphate wanted to expand its territories and turn the west towards Africa. The reason why North Africans identify as Arabs is because of the language they speak and their religion. However, identity is constituted of many other factors. As a North African, I believe that my identity is the result of a myriad of identities. My society is influenced by Middle Eastern cultures, yes. However, I cannot be Arab or Amazigh purely. North Africans need to understand that their cultures and history started before the Arab conquest. As we can see, other colonized nations influenced by their colonizers, North Africans are influenced by Arabs. This campaign is an opportunity for us to finally sit down and think about our identities. Thank you and see you next week.
In this week in Africa, within the African region, finally, after a long wait, Cameroon's high expectations have been crowned with good news. Over the span of 4 days from the 15th to the 18th of June, the 25th Annual Convention of the ARCC, African Regional Commission, was held over a video conference to declare the country a polio-free zone for the certification of the poliomyelitis eradication. This new polio status for Cameroon was made public by Cameroon's Minister of Public Health, Manoda Melachi, who congratulated the team that worked on obtaining this certification on a Twitter post. Up next, with aims to improve and secure the religious collaborations, cooperations, and the well-being of all being advocated whilst addressing religious and national concerns in Liberia, such as the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, the Interreligious Council of Liberia, IRCL, which is a conglomeration of the Liberian Council of Churches and the National Muslim Council of Liberia, has collaborated with the National Public Health Institute to commence the training of 510 mobilizers to ensure the implementation of its phase-based actions intended to curb the spread of the novel coronavirus in the country. Lastly, denying charges of corruption, money laundering, and breach of trust at the Paris trial on the 18th of June, Lamine Diack, a Senegalese businessman and the former International Association of Athletics Federation president from 1919 to 2015, and his son, Papa Massata Diack, a former IAAF marketing consultant, await their verdicts in September, as the prosecutors requested they receive a 5-year sentence and that both men be fined 500,000 euros. That has been the headline news for this week in the West African region of Africa. With myself, Jabachi Morgu, as your host, thank you for listening and goodbye.
Hello everyone, and welcome to This Week in Africa. We'll start off with an update to our coverage of the occurrences in Burundi. Evariste Ndayishimiye was sworn in as Burundi's new president at the Ngoma Stadium in the capital city, a week after the sudden death of outgoing President Pierre Nkurunziza. Ndayishimiye was originally scheduled to be sworn into office in August, but the Constitutional Court ruled that his swearing-in take place as soon as possible, following the death of his predecessor. He faces a mountain to climb as the cost of Nkurunziza's re-election in 2015 for an unlawful third and final term is well known. It brought oppressive laws, brutal repression, arbitrary arrests, and huge groups of refugees fleeing overseas. The GDP of the country per person fell to the world's lowest, overseas investment collapsed, and the country was marginalized both regionally and internationally. On our second story, Kenya has won the UN Security Council seat after beating Djibouti in the second round of voting on Thursday. The contest between Kenya and Djibouti headed to the second round of voting Thursday after the first phase saw Nairobi's victory insufficient to win the UN seat. Some of the decisions Kenya may be involved may include sanctions or the rising use of force to preserve peace, as well as electing judges of the International Court of Justice. Working alongside the 5 permanent members with veto powers, that is Russia, UK, US, China and France, Kenya will join 9 other non-permanent members and could get a chance to preside over the council sittings, an influential opportunity to influence agenda. However, as a continent of over 1 billion people, we ought to ask ourselves, when will we have a permanent representative in the Security Council? And finally, the Democratic Republic of the Congo's High Court has found a top presidential aide guilty of embezzling public funds and sentenced him to 20 years in jail. Vital Kamerhe, President Felix Tshisekedi's 61-year-old chief of staff, was found guilty of diverting public funds worth around $48.8 million, along with his co-accused, Lebanese businessman Jamal Sami, who is 79 years of age, the court said on Saturday. Kamerhe is the most senior politician to face corruption charges in DRC, where high-level corruption is endemic, and it is only our hope that many other African countries could take the lead and hold its leaders to higher levels of accountability. That's it for this week. Goodbye.